Did you know that in 2022 there were around 2,420 violent crimes per 100,000 residents reported in Memphis, Tennessee? This made Memphis the most dangerous city in the United States that year. However, this isn't the first year the city has been labeled as the most dangerous in the country. And according to some lists, Memphis has continued to rank as the #1 most dangerous city in the United States. Memphis, Tennessee is a city that wears its musical heart on its sleeve. As the birthplace of rock and roll and the home of iconic soul and blues legends like Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, and B.B. King, Memphis's rich musical heritage is undeniable. The city's vibrant music scene is still pulsing with energy, with iconic venues like Sun Studio and the Orpheum Theater continuing to host world-class performances. However, despite its cultural significance, Memphis is plagued by a reputation for danger and crime. The contrast between the city's gleaming music history and its gritty, hardscrabble reality is a stark reminder of the complexities and challenges faced by many American cities. Today on Across the Globe, we're going to be looking at how Memphis became the most dangerous city in America. Issue number 1. Alarming homicide rates and violent crime. As mentioned, crime is a major problem in Memphis and has been for a long time. As reported by the U.S. Sun, there were 237 homicides reported in the city in 2019. That number increased by 38% in 2020 with 327 homicides. In 2023, a record-breaking 398 people fell victim to homicides in the city. This means that Memphis is much more dangerous than big cities like New York and San Francisco, even though Memphis is less busy and much less populated. According to Neighborhood Scout, residents of Memphis face a 1 in 41 chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime. In 2023, Suggested by Locals listed 17 reasons not to move to Memphis, Tennessee, as voted by the locals. At the top of their list was crime. They noted how around 15,318 violent crimes, including homicides, happen in Memphis every year. As reported by CNN, in early 2024, the Justice Department claimed that crime in Memphis had reached a 17-year high. Off the back of this worrying trend, in an effort to curb criminality, Memphis Mayor Paul Young met with some of the city's highest-ranking gang leaders in Memphis and crafted a ceasefire between the groups for 7 days, highlighting the severity of gang warfare in the city that is blatantly leading to an increase in homicides. According to Travel Richie, gang activity and drug trade is particularly rife in the areas of North Memphis, Orange Mound, South Memphis, Raleigh, Hickory Hill, and Fraser. To that, they recommended tourists avoid these areas altogether. What's more, as a result of the city's high crime rate, Memphis has historically struggled to attract tourists and visitors. The city's reputation for violence and crime has made it a challenging destination for many potential tourists, particularly families and young couples. This is in contrast to other parts of Tennessee, such as Nashville, Gatlinburg, and Pigeon Forge, which have become popular tourist destinations. For those who have felt safe enough to visit Memphis, Action News 5 reported that during an investigation into tourism in the city, the University of Memphis found that many tourists feel unsafe venturing further out past the city's landmarks. And data showed that 5% of social media posts in 2022 about Memphis mentioned crime. Issue number 2. Juvenile delinquency. Juvenile delinquency is a pressing issue in Memphis where the city's high crime rates and gang culture have led to a scourge of violence and lawlessness among its youth. Many young people in Memphis are drawn into the world of gangs, often due to a lack of opportunities, poor education, and dysfunctional family dynamics. The consequences of this problem are stark, with gang-related violence, drug trafficking, and property crime causing widespread fear and devastation in the community. In response to this crisis, the mayor of Memphis implemented a curfew for children under 18 in June 2020 in an effort to stem the tide of youth crime and keep young people off the streets after dark. The curfew, which restricts minors from being out alone between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., is a bold move aimed at reducing the risk of violence and keeping young people safe from harm. Despite this initiative, the city's juvenile delinquency problem remains a major challenge that requires sustained effort and investment from local authorities, community leaders, and parents to address the root causes of this issue and provide positive alternatives for young people. In March 2024, Action News 5 reported that a lack of resources for youth in Memphis and the juvenile court system have become a major concern. They noted how data from the Memphis Shelby Crime Commission showed that juvenile delinquent charges were up 15% from 2022 to 2023, and 45% to 70% of the children seen in welfare cases show up years later in delinquency cases. Issue number 3, property crime. By now, you have probably come to the realization that Memphis is not one of the safest places to live in America. In fact, in addition to what we've already mentioned, according to Neighborhood Scout, residents of the city face a 1 in 14 chance of becoming a victim of a property crime. They also noted how Memphis has one of the highest rates of motor vehicle theft in the nation, according to FBI crime data. In 2023, more than 15,800 cars were reported stolen in Memphis, and major property crime was up 17.8% compared to 2022. With these statistics in mind, Neighborhood Scout gave Memphis a crime index of 0, meaning the city is safer than 0% of other U.S. cities. Issue number 4, lack of good public schooling. The Memphis, Tennessee school system has long been plagued by poor performance and underachievement. According to Suggested by Locals, the city's high school graduation rate is a dismal 82.50%, a statistic that is both alarming and reflective of the systemic issues that have plagued the district for years. For context, the state as a whole has a high school graduation rate that's nearly 90%. Despite efforts to reform and improve the system, many schools in Memphis struggle to provide students with a quality education, leading to high dropout rates and limited opportunities for students to succeed. This is worrying, as in a city where crime rates are already high, the correlation between poor education and crime is particularly alarming. With many young people lacking the skills and opportunities to succeed, they are more likely to turn to illegal activities as a means of survival, further exacerbating the city's crime problem. Given the number of school shootings that have occurred in Memphis over the last few years, Suggested by Locals also noted how the city's schools are very dangerous. In fact, the problem has grown so serious that several schools are thinking about letting their teachers carry guns in the classroom in order to safeguard the children. Issue number 5, homelessness. Despite some improvements, homelessness remains a persistent and pervasive issue in Memphis, exacerbating the city's overall crime and safety concerns. Although the city has made progress in addressing the problem, it is still a major challenge that can contribute to the city's notorious reputation as the most dangerous city in America. According to the Hospitality Hub, in June 2023, there were approximately 3,500 to 4,200 homeless individuals in Memphis, with many more struggling to make ends meet on the margins of society. Homelessness can be a breeding ground for crime, as individuals without stable housing and income are often forced to turn to illegal activities to survive. Furthermore, the lack of access to basic necessities such as healthcare, sanitation, and food can also lead to increased levels of desperation and frustration, which can further escalate tensions and increase the risk of violence. In February 2023, Suggested by Locals listed homelessness as one of the 17 reasons not to move to Memphis. Issue number 6, poverty. Memphis has long struggled with poverty, a problem that has its roots in the city's complex and troubled history. From the devastating effects of slavery and segregation to the urban decay and economic disinvestment of the mid-20th century, poverty has been a persistent and pervasive issue in Memphis. The city's economic decline was exacerbated by the decline of the railroad and manufacturing industries, which left many communities without access to good jobs and opportunities for economic mobility. Today, poverty remains a major challenge in Memphis, with a staggering 21.4% of the city's population living below the poverty line, according to a 2022 report by the University of Memphis. In 2023, Suggested by Locals stated that around one-fourth of the people that reside in Memphis live in poverty. This makes Memphis one of the poorest cities in the United States when you compare it to cities of similar sizes. This staggering statistic is deeply connected to the city's high crime rates, as poverty often breeds desperation, frustration, and a lack of opportunities for young people to escape the cycle of poverty. When individuals are unable to access basic necessities such as healthcare, education, and employment, they are more likely to turn to illegal activities as a means of survival, perpetuating a cycle of violence and crime that can be difficult to break. Issue number 7. Segregation and racism. Memphis, Tennessee has a long and painful history of racism and segregation, which has had a lasting impact on the city's social and economic fabric. Although the civil rights movement ended more than 60 years ago, the legacy of segregation continues to cast a shadow over the city. Despite some progress towards racial equality, many of the city's neighborhoods, schools, and social institutions remain segregated, with Black Americans disproportionately affected by poverty, lack of access to quality education, and limited economic opportunities. This entrenched segregation has created a deep sense of resentment and frustration among many Black Americans, who feel that their voices are not being heard and their rights are still being denied. This has led to ongoing tensions and unrest in the community, often manifesting in acts of crime and violence as a form of protest against the systemic injustices that continue to plague the city. In February 2023, Suggested by Locals listed history of segregation and racism amongst their 17 reasons to not move to Memphis. They claimed that many people of different races in the city encounter racism in their day-to-day lives. What's more, the city's police department has faced criticism for its handling of racial tensions and its treatment of Black Americans, which has led to accusations of racism and police brutality. According to the Marshall Project, in 2023, data shows that Memphis police arrested more people, mostly Black men, than any other city in the state of Tennessee. As reported by The Guardian, in July 2023, the U.S. Department of Justice launched a formal investigation into racial bias in Memphis policing, marking a significant step towards addressing long-standing concerns about brutality and discrimination within the city's police department. The investigation, known as the Civil Pattern and Practice Inquiry, was prompted by a series of high-profile incidents, including the tragic death of Tyree Nichols in January 23. Nichols, a 29-year-old Black man, died 3 days after being brutally beaten by 5 Memphis police officers during a traffic stop. The incident was caught on video and sparked widespread outrage and calls for justice. What about how Detroit went from good to bad to good again?